Sspa nomination we'll be reviewing this evening is for Reston National Golf Course. So as most of you know, the Reston National Golf Course is located between Colts Neck Road, Sunrise Valley Drive, and South Lakes Drive. Soapstone Road bisects the property, dividing the eastern and western portion. It's also situated about a half mile from the Reston Town Center metro station. So currently the site is developed and operating as a golf course, and the recommended use for this property in the comprehensive plan is for private recreation, or more specifically, to remain as a golf course. It's also important to note that this site contains a resource protection area and floodplain along its southern and eastern edges. So the nomination proposes dedicating 80 acres of the 166-acre site for open space, parkland, or some other public use. This area is located on the eastern half of the site and is shown in green on the map. The portion of the property proposed for open space also includes the resource protection area and floodplains. And the remaining 86 acres on the western half of the site are proposed for residential development. This is shown in yellow on the map. The nomination envisions a mix of housing types at various price points, including townhouses and multiplex units. At this time, the nominator has not specified the number of proposed dwelling units. So Mark Looney, who represents the nominator, is going to provide a brief presentation of his nomination.
That's not, this is as close as they
provide
yeah, it's not exactly there. There should be some around it. Yeah, they should still have it, yeah. These diagrams are not matching up exactly.
Because it doesn't look very similar to the...
So this will show you that you don't really line up with what they are planning to do.
All right, I'm gonna stand up here because I think folks can probably see better or hear me better from up here. But good evening, everybody. My name is Mark Looney. I'm a land use and zoning attorney for the law firm of Cooley. Our office is in the Reston Town Center. I represent the ownership of Reston National Golf Course along with NVR, who is a potential development partner of the ownership group on aspects of the development that I'm going to talk about tonight. NVR, as you're probably aware, is a Reston-based home builder and development company. Been around for decades, and this is literally right in their backyard.
No, it's in my backyard.
That's great, That's great, John. I appreciate the open mic. So what I'm going to do tonight is talk about essentially a point of inflection for the golf course property. As most of you are aware, the golf course is about 60 years old. During that time frame, it has had, I'll call it, minimal amount of reinvestment into the property over the years. The sprinkler system in many respects is the same as it was in the 1960s. For those of you who have been in there, the clubhouse is dated, it's small. There's very little food and beverage options. The kitchen's been redone. Hold on, I'm getting there. Come on, folks. We're never going to get through this tonight. If everything that I say, you shout at me, right? So I want to give you information. You can shout at me during the Q&A session, but I think we're all going to be better if we start this process with a baseline of information, and then you can shoot your arrows at me after the fact. But I'm never going to get through this presentation if you keep interrupting. So please, just give me a few minutes. I'll get through it, and then we can get your comments and your questions out of the way. The kitchen, as somebody said, had a modest renovation within the last couple of years. There have been cosmetic improvements to the golf course over the last 60 years, but there's not really been substantial reinvestment in the property since its inception. And from the ownership's perspective, because I was involved in this conversation a decade ago, right? I stood in front of many of you, and I heard the thing that said, keep the zoning as it is. Don't change the zoning. It's a golf course. Don't change the zoning. So what does that mean? What that means is you need to have a viable golf course. And so the property is at a point of inflection where in order for it to be a viable, financially successful property run as a golf course, there needs to be reinvestment in the property, plain and simple. That reinvestment, as I will talk about here in a second, is what I'll call Plan A. And that reinvestment is essentially taking the community at its word and saying that this property largely should be used as a golf course. The second plan that I'll talk about, for reasons that I'll get to in the conversation tonight, is because once this moment of this window for a comprehensive plan amendment conversation closes, if there is not interest in furthering the conversation, then the wheels will be set in motion to do things that we will talk about tonight. And so I say that it's a point of inflection because it's a moment in time where we can have a conversation about what this property should be, can be, and should be used for the next 60 years. Not the next 6 years, not the next 12 years, but the next 60 years. Right now, it's 100% in private hands. You've had 3 different development entities come through and talk about development options on the property. As long as it remains in private hands, that prospect exists. And so part of the conversation tonight is what can we do to potentially put it into public hands where that pressure over time doesn't exist. But in order to have that conversation, we need to get on what's called the work program that the county has for comprehensive plan amendments. If you're not on the work program, as Joel Parks was talking about earlier, you can't even engage in this conversation. And so part of what I want to talk with you all about tonight is what the options are and how we can have a conversation about whether one option is better than the other, whether aspects of one option are better than other aspects of the option. To level set, though, I want to talk about the PRC zoning that is applicable to the majority of Reston. Because I think unless you understand how it works, what I'm going to talk about tonight may not make sense to you. So when Bob Simon set out to create Reston, there was no zoning ordinance in effect at the time that allowed him to do what he needed to do. He wanted to mix uses vertically and horizontally. He wanted to aggregate and build higher intensities one place and lower intensities somewhere else. And the county zoning ordinance coming out of World War II didn't anticipate that. It segregated commercial and residential. It assumed everything was quarter-acre lots or half-acre lots or one-acre lots, and you couldn't create the type of community that he wanted to have. So he sold the county on a vision. And that vision was embodied in the master plan. The master plan for what the community should look like. And he amended it, I don't know, a dozen times over the years as master developers came and went. I shouldn't say he, but it was amended dozens of times as developers came and went. And over time, once that vision was set, and I should talk about what's in the vision, it envisioned where do you put village centers? Where do you put town centers? Where do you put low-density residential? Where do you put high-density residential? And he petitioned the county and said, here's my vision for Reston, please bless it. And that was adopted as the long-term vision of the county. And then systematically, over decades, different developers came in and rezoned property to match that vision. And they rezoned it into the PRC zoning district. And that zoning requires a development plan that is approved with the rezoning that sets forth what you can do within the area of the rezoning and where you can do it, and how much of it you can do. That development plan, as many of you may remember, for the golf course said open space, golf course, and open space on the majority of them. We'll talk a little bit about this in a second. That was the vision for what ought to go on the property. That then systematically rezoned it in chunks of 100, 200, 300 acres at a time until you have what is today Reston's PRC district. But that development plan is the zoning, it's the discretionary zoning entitlement that establishes what's allowed to happen on the property. There were three different implementation approvals that come behind that. One is a PRC plan, which used to be called a preliminary plan. And it's a basic engineering drawing that says here's where the roads are going to go and here's where the lots are going to be and that sort of thing. And there's a site or subdivision plan, which is the detailed construction drawing for the horizontal development, the stormwater detention facilities, the other utilities, the roads, etc. And then the final thing is the building permit, which allows for the vertical construction of buildings. So these are the approvals that you need to develop anywhere in the PRC district. So let's talk about the golf course property. The actual first zoning approval for the property came in 1966, a zoning case called B555. And it established, it's one of the first zoning cases in Reston as evidenced by the B that leads into it. A was the Lake Ann approval, B was among the shortly thereafter approvals. And it covered 134 acres of property. Today, 14 acres of the golf course remain zoned to that B555 zone. And I'll show you where that is in a second. The remaining three cases came in 1971. The golf course had actually been constructed by then, and so they were rezoning the golf course, which had been established pursuant to a special permit on property that was not zoned PRC yet. They came in and rezoned chunks of the golf course, along with creating the clusters that are today around the golf course through these three zoning cases. And as I talked about, the development plans for the three 1971 approvals showed golf course and open space on them. So, because that 14 acres is still zoned to the B555 rezoning, and because the development plan for the three zonings that came in 1971 show golf course on the property, in order to implement, because PRC plans are implementation plans, in order to implement what that zoning allows, you file a PRC plan application. It's not an amendment to the development plan, it's a PRC plan application. In this case, one of the options that we have for the property is to file a PRC plan to renovate and modernize the golf course and to use 14 acres of the property consistent with the B555 zoning from 1966. What does that mean? That means, it works, there we go. What that means is, in big picture terms, so let me set the stage. So this is the driving range today, and will be the driving range in the future. The clubhouse and parking lot here. What this plan does is actually I can summarize it for you. It reconfigures 9 out of the 18 holes on the golf course. And it flips what are today holes 1 through 9 into holes 10 through 18. So the finishing holes will come in along Colts Neck on the western side of the property, as opposed to coming in along Sunrise Valley on the eastern and northern side of the property. As part of that, it moves and creates new greens, new tee boxes, new fairways. It changes the topography, new sand traps, new irrigation systems, etc. We also would install upgraded infrastructure on the property, new sprinkler systems, fencing in appropriate locations, course maintenance facilities. It would change the parking and the roadways to access the property. It would include a multi-story lighted driving range to facilitate both practice and instruction during the winter months when the sun sets at 4:30 in the afternoon. Heated bays, and as I'll show you on a subsequent slide, we're just trying to compete with what the Park Authority already has under operation today. It also would include new short game training areas and new putting areas around the property. So this is what a golf course is today. You go to Florida, you go to North Carolina, you go to South Carolina. So if you go to one of those areas, and even in some of the municipal courses around, this is what golf is today. Golf has changed as a result of the pandemic and as a result of just changes in technology. It is less about playing a 5-hour round of golf, and it's more about
That's
spending
not
90
true.
minutes or 2 hours with your friends practicing and engaging in activities. So what does this
That is
look
not
like
true.
physically? So this is the plan where the existing driving range is today. It would be rebuilt as a multi-tier system here, a new clubhouse that includes indoor instruction facilities, new food and beverage offerings, etc. The townhouse portion that you see on the lower left-hand area, that's part of the 1966 B555 zoning. You'll see also the new short game area in the top and the new putting area in the bottom. Moving around, so for those of you who know the course well, I think, John, this is in your backyard. Hole 10 would start at the clubhouse, go out and come back to new hole 18, where hole 1 now comes back to hole 9. As we get farther to the south, so there's 18 and 10 again, we have shorter par 3 numbers coming in, or holes coming in from hole 17, working their way up to hole 18, and then 10 transitioning to 11. We also are proposing off of Soapstone a new back 9 grill that would be essentially a grab-and-go facility for golfers who are making the turn coming out of holes 1 through 9 into the back 9. It's where the maintenance facility is today, if everybody knows the property. And so these are examples of where this concept has played out across the country. I'll note that the driving range to the top and the driving range to the right is the Fairfax County Park Authority. It's lit, the bays are heated, they're available for night and cold weather use. This bay is another municipal driving range owned by a city government, and then some of the lighted course areas that are to the bottom. This is modern golf. And so as part of Plan A, which is to pursue an upgrade and renovation of the golf course, this is what the ownership intends to do. We understand, however, that this represents disruption. It is disrupting to those who live on the golf course. It is disrupting to those who are concerned about the environment. It is disruptive on a whole lot of levels. And because of that, we understand that you would have concerns about it. And so therefore, we're using this SSPA nomination window to ask the question, if there must be disruption to the property, to put it into the condition that I talked about earlier, should we use that disruption as a moment of discussion, or establish a moment of discussion about whether at the end of that disruption, this is what you want to see on the property for the next 60 years? Or is there another vision of what would happen on this property that doesn't necessarily entail this? And I can tell you that just saying do nothing is not an answer.
Yeah, it is.
And so the opportunity that we have proposed is to establish a conversation about whether the 166 acres of land could be used differently than a golf course, in a way that perhaps takes a good chunk of the property out of private hands and puts it into public hands. To talk about whether there's an opportunity to add additional houses into the Reston Association through membership that a lot of you were asking my predecessors up here, when are you going to join the RA? I'll tell you that the NVR and the ownership group are well aware of that request and want to have the conversation about joining RA, willing to engage in the conversation with us. And so what you are looking at is Plan B. And Plan B is using this window that we have to put this proposal onto the work program and spend the next couple of years trying to figure out if we can come up with a vision for how to use 166 acres differently than it is being used today. I don't know that this is the plan that ultimately will be the one that even comes close. It could be that another portion of the property has development on it and the other portion is reserved as open space or used for some other public use. But I'm telling you that from the ownership's perspective, change has to occur on this property. It has to. There hasn't been any investment in the property in 60 years. Change has to come. And so what we're talking about is a moment in time where we can have a conversation about what that change looks like and how you can shape it. So I'll stop there, Salem, unless you or David want to jump in and start to take the arrows that I said I would take. So.
Can I ask one clarifying question about the B555?
Sure.
So what does that entail as far as a zoning, as related to?
So it's the development plan approved with that 1966 approval shows medium density residential on the development plan, which in PRC district terms means roughly 20 dwelling units to the acre. It's 14 acres in total that are covered by that area, and that is we're showing 288 stacked townhomes. So that's in effect, one unit over one unit, 144 times. I'll take your word for that.
Okay, we have a question on the far side, or comment or question?
Yeah, this question is for the staff. And my question is, if 100% of the people in this room, this standing room only crowd, and the vast majority of Reston residents are against the project, but the staff wants to move forward, what happens?
For staff, staff will make a recommendation either way, whether we think we have anything to learn from putting this on the work program. And then that would, if you're going to testify at one of the planning commission workshops, they're called, then that would be another opportunity. I mean, that's the process. That's what happens. Does that
So in the end, what voice do the residents of Reston have?
the same voice you had tonight? Because let me make this clear. It's not always the case that the board agrees with staff. We try. We strive for alignment with the community. We strive for alignment with. I'd say when we do a planning study, we strive for alignment. And what ends up happening during a planning study, by the time we get to a public hearing in that stage, we haven't reached alignment. That's very unusual. Usually those planning studies just stop. They stop cold, don't make it to hearing. But I'm not sure if you're asking exclusively about screening or what happens in a planning study.
Yeah, it's really just more about what voice do the residents of Reston have. If the residents are against it, they don't have the ultimate call, right?
No, it's the board. It's the board. We offer a recommendation, and then the planning commission also. And sometimes there's alignment there, and sometimes there's a difference. Yeah.
How does the citizen let the board know what we want?
Okay. Well,
Walter's here.
Address that, and then I have an answer for this.
Until we had a microphone, that's all.
As your district board member, I'm listening.
Yeah. You've been waiting a while, so let's listen to this.
I tried that earlier, so maybe this time it works. First of all, I'd like to know who are the one people who own that golf?
The question was who owns the
Where's the
golf?
money coming from? Who owns it right now?
So the golf course is owned.
Is it a hedge fund?
No,
Uh-huh. Okay. So the hedge fund,
no, it's not.
it's not?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes.
will you bypass our elected representative? Right, our voice, will you bypass his voice to have a non-elected person make a different decision? Is that what you guys would plan to do? Or will you listen to the community and find a way to invest in the course without adding townhomes onto it and preserving it?
I've explained tonight what the plan is. The plan is, in the absence of the SSPA, let's assume it doesn't get added to the work program, as I think you're advocating, that this is the plan that we would pursue.
So you would pursue housing?
Yes, sir. Plan A.
There's a question.
You
far
can't
side
do
of the
that
room.
legally.
Go ahead, Salem.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I heard at least 7 times that nothing's been done for the last 60 years, and probably another 7 times that change is happening. Right? 2 questions. If whoever owns this place, I didn't hear the name, you didn't disclose who?
Yes, it's a company called Warhorse Cities.
Warhorse.
Yeah.
Right.
Based in
Baltimore, Maryland.
Based in Baltimore.
That's where they are.
Yep.
So one, why did they buy it, right? And second, if there's so much hard for that, oh, nothing's been done for 60 years, this thing can be fixed.
Yeah,
Without doing all this, if it's just a sprinkler system, the economics of 288 homes, or whatever,
Right.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But this point about saying it 6 times that, oh, nothing's been done, and second, that, oh, but change is gonna happen, it's a little contradictory.
So I appreciate the question. So in 2019 is when the current owner bought the property. Obviously, we all know what happened in 2020. As this gentleman was talking about earlier, there was an effort, I'll say during and coming out of the pandemic. I wasn't involved in it at the time, but there was a conversation, I guess similarly, to see if there was a consensus that could be built around development of the property. For a host of reasons, the ownership determined within the last, call it year to 15 months, that the partner that they had engaged with in that endeavor was not the right partner. It wasn't the right partner from a personality standpoint. It wasn't the right partner from a communication standpoint. It just wasn't the right group. And so the ownership stepped back and tried to figure out a different path forward. And to answer your question about, sure, you can fix a sprinkler. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking, let me finish, right? And this gets back to, I'll come back in a second. The owner owns this property as private property. Yes, it is publicly accessible for those who pay a fee to come play the golf course, but otherwise it's private property. It is an investment. They have a right to achieve a financial return and a success with an investment. In order to achieve that financial success that they want to achieve with the investment, they need to make this a different golf course. Fixing the sprinkler doesn't make it an economic success. What makes it an economic success is to bring in more patrons, more golfers, more students, more people eating food and beverage, more people practicing on the driving range. Your own Fairfax County Park Authority figured this out. This driving range here on the upper right-hand side is what we're competing against. We're competing against county facilities that are better.
Where is that
You have
county
to be,
facility?
let me finish. You have to be able to achieve an economic success. I realize, as I acknowledged earlier, that this is a change from the golf course that you've come to understand, appreciate, love over the last 60 years. But it's private property. And part of the conversation about the SSPA is, long-term, should it remain in private property hands? Should it remain in private hands? Should some of it be potentially converted to public hands? To where you don't have the economic motives that you do when it's privately owned.
Okay,
So, that's the reason.
Okay, we have a question back here.
Yeah, hello, my name is Amy, I'm a golfer, I live on the golf course. I'm a little confused about the investment question, because y'all have owned this golf course for several years now. And I've lived on this golf course, and I've played on this golf course. And yeah, there hasn't been much investment by this group, and you say you want more golfers, but some of the policies that the management company is currently using and has in the past has actually pushed golfers away.
Yes.
For instance, I used to play golf on this golf course. I used to play 9 holes on weekday mornings because I had to go to work. And at some point several years ago, I know it's back, but for several years, they canceled it. They wouldn't allow us to do that. We used to have groups that went off the 10th hole. Last year, was it last year? I think it was last year. I played this golf course. I happened to be playing it with 2 guys. So I got paired with 2 guys who were in town at a conference. They want to play golf for a day. They came down, I played with them, and I was frankly embarrassed by the state of the golf course. The greens had just been punched about 2 weeks prior, and they were horrible. They were bumpy, they were slow, you couldn't run a putt through it. And you say that no one's invested in this golf course, but at the same time, you're the ones who own it.
It didn't get into its current state overnight, right? It's decades. It's not just. So that's decades. So there's no question that it's over time deteriorated, and it hasn't had the reinvestment in it, and I fully appreciate that. And hear me out. And the ability to reinvest into the golf course, you have to. It is capital intensive, right? Your resident association has pools and other facilities that are 50 or 60 years old. And they're in need of the same capital reinvestment that we're talking about into this property. And the RA is struggling with trying to figure out how to fund that. And so the golf course is in no different economic condition, I'll say, than your own resident association facility. It takes money to reinvest into it.
Sure.
And this is about capitalizing those improvements.
But you've also had policies in this last year that have directly harmed golf courses. I watched golfers all winter play when every other golf course in the area has a frost delay. I play at 1757. I also play at Reston National. Reston National did not have a frost delay. They let golfers out on the course when they could damage the course. They could damage the greens, and the tee boxes show it. They've been damaged because the management group allowed play when the golf course could be damaged. So explain that to me, because you actually hurt the golf course this past winter.
I hear what you're saying. All I can say is that that's above my personal pay grade in terms of understanding the day-to-day management. Salem, you have one question.
I think. Yes. What it sounds like is you're just running it into the ground and then threatening us with a development.
Yes.
I appreciate that. I personally don't know the economics of golf, and all I know is I live along the golf course, and there are golfers every minute going up and down that golf course. So you might say that they're not enough to support maintaining the course and the capitalization and so forth. But if you run it down enough, maybe we can afford to buy it. Maybe the county can. But on the other hand, you give a rather egregious example of development, which is on the left. And I guess I have a question for the planning group, which is, if the planning group looks at what a golf course takes to maintain, they can inform this group about what are, from a more neutral source, and maybe decide what kind of footprint any development of the clubhouse area is necessary to really make it viable. And I'd like to hear that from our planning commission or by a comparative study done by a neutral party.
I'll just quickly respond by saying the throughput on the 18 holes in any given day is constrained, right? You can only push so many golfers through the pipeline during the day. Where the economic success comes in is on the non-18 hole activity, right? It's driving more food and beverage, more instruction, more practice, that sort of thing. That's where the economic success comes in. Fair?
Okay, my question is, I was part of the process in 2021 as well. We were invited to the golf course and they gave us drinks and tried to schmooze us and let us in on this. And I appreciate today that you're trying to threaten us by saying, oh, you're gonna build this and it's gonna be worse, or we're gonna let it overgrow and it's gonna be worse. My question is, just to clarify, and maybe this is more for Mr. Alcorn, if the board does not open or say, give approval for this, legally speaking, are they allowed to move forward with development? And if they aren't, then I don't know why we even have to have any of the rest of this conversation this evening.
To the Planning Commission and to the Board of Supervisors to evaluate. I will say that, as I talked about with this slide, it's not changing the development plan associated with it. It's not changing the zoning. It's an implementation plan that comes with it.
So is that accurate? So they can move forward with building townhomes and updating the golf course regardless of whether or not you approve that. Is that correct?
I think Walter wants the
sorry.
microphone.
Thank you, Claire. They have made that claim to me. I am not convinced.
Yay!
Hi, everybody. My name is Carl. And first off, I just want to say thank you to staff and everybody at the county, Councilmember Alcorn for being here and for listening to everybody. I also want to thank everybody for showing up on a Monday evening. My question was actually kind of answered just there in terms of what the next steps would be if the SSPA doesn't move forward, and then therefore it would go to a PRC process, and that gets into the semantics of the planning process. But while I have the chance, I'm probably not going to get an opportunity to do this again, so I want to ask everybody in the room a rhetorical question. And that is, if you are somebody who has kids or grandkids who might be around my age, I'm 26, where do they live? Do they live in Fairfax County? I'm a third generation Fairfax County resident. Do they live around here, and are you able to see them on a regular basis? Because the thing is, those of you, and congratulations, who have that luxury are probably still aware that a lot of people don't have that luxury. And folks like me who maybe want to buy a home and start a family here in Reston here in the next couple of years are looking at places like a townhome along the golf course in a potential new development to be able to do that here in the community that we call home, just like everybody here calls home. And so my question is, would you rather your kids live here or in Fredericksburg? Because ultimately that's the situation we're dealing with. Reston is like this room. Reston is like this room. Reston, I don't want to, I like Reston.
Can you
Reston
afford
is like
it?
this room. I'm let me finish. I'm almost done. Reston is like this room. We have so many chairs, and we have more people than we have chairs. The solution is to find places to put more chairs in the room so everybody can have a seat. Wow. That is all it takes. And I'm not saying that needs to be at a golf course. It could be at a nice multi-family development on a transit-oriented block that is being built by the metro station. But it just has to be somewhere. Because we spent $3 billion on the metro. We have a great job market despite everything that's going on across the river. Let's try and think about how we can build some more chairs. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Joe, and I live in Glencourse, and I've lived in the same house in Glencourse since 1978. That house was once upon a time in affordable housing. There are thousands of houses like it in Reston that were affordable once upon a time. You need to ask yourself, what happened to cause these houses to become completely unaffordable? And I don't necessarily think it's the price of the housing. I think it's the jobs that are not being, getting the right salaries to afford these houses. That's the problem. But I will say this about the golf course. Right? We bought our house with the understanding that the golf course was a golf course. It was always going to be a golf course, right? And any of you that bought even recently on the golf course expected that this was going to be a golf course, you know, ad infinitum, right? Now we're being told, okay, well, you know, your owner bought this in 2019, you said, I think, right? And I believe they paid somewhere in the neighborhood of less than $10 million?
No, 24 million.
Okay, $24 million. If that was
Overpaid.
entirely, well, if that was entirely developable, $24 million is chump change. I'm sorry.
True.
You know, those lots will go for an extraordinary amount of money. So my feeling is this is all speculation on the part of land developers looking at this and saying, oh, we've got we have an opportunity here. There's a golf course. That golf course is failing. We helped it. You know, it's been helped to fail now by every successive owner. So yeah, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's my problem. All right. There should have been no expectation that this was ever a developable golf course.
Nope.
Robert Simon created it as a golf course, and it should have stayed as a golf course.
Bravo.
And I see you, and I've got a few people.
I'd rather get to the question.
Yeah, if you want to do that, I know not everybody's going to get a chance. Public.
Stick around.
We're gonna still take a few more questions, but before people leave, Sahar here, if you want to write your comment on an index card, and if that's what's easiest for you, please flag her. We can start passing those out. Salem, did you have a question?
Thank you.
Yeah, so respect and trust seems to have been deteriorating for years. Sorry, there we go, better. So respect and trust seems to be deteriorating with this golf course since 2019. People who live around the golf course have seen the different practices. Naming a few, there's invasive species sign, because that was approached to scare us that we cared about the invasives with some environmental reason for it. It's an investment company who owns the golf course and can't manage the golf course. It's a CIP plan. There's no reason they can't plan for this. It seems like we are being blamed because an investment company is trying to run a golf course. And from the outside, it looks like they're purposely running into the ground as an excuse to have it developed. I mean, I was trying to write down a list of things that happened. I mean, just the last 2 months, you guys cleared and wrote every single tree from every stream or tributary, including the RPA. How do we have trust, even if we go to Plan B, that you will honor and actually care for us? I feel like even if we go to Plan A, give a mouse a cookie, you're just going to take more and more and more. And why not wait out the developer until we get a new investment company to take it over?
Right here.
I can't, I need a book.
It's actually the day-to-day operation managed by a company called Kemper Sports, which manages 100 and some odd golf courses around the country. So the day-to-day management is done by golf professionals. It's not done by the ownership group. It's not a contract. I hear murmur in the background. So guess, in terms of sort of what happens if you pick path 2, there's nothing that commits, at this stage, there's nothing that commits, if Plan B were to get on the work program and we spend the next couple of years having a conversation, there's nothing that commits either party either way, the community or the ownership group, to any particular outcome or any particular result associated with it. It's really about trying to figure out if there's a conversation to be had about different ways to address some of the things that you're expressing concern about, which is, long term, what's the right way to manage this property, both physically and economically moving forward. And ultimately, if something were ever to be approved, there would be, dozens, if not hundreds, of pages of commitments that would lock in sort of whatever those things are, but that's years down the road. Right now, it's really just a question of, is it appropriate to have a discussion about the future of the property?
One more question.
From over here, sir, over to your left. You said the owners have a right economically to develop this, but there's a pretty established track record prior to them buying it of these attempts being made, and I'm no expert on all the details and ins and outs, but obviously those other investors walked away having given their best try. So when the current owner bought it, it was speculative that they could run this through the gamut and be successful. That speculation hasn't worked out. So when you speculate like that, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. So the inflection point is sort of self-inflicted, and if there's other investments that they would like to go ahead and recoup that money by selling it to go pursue, that might be something for them to consider as the inflection point. But I just wanted to clarify one thing. Your plan A versus plan B, you showed that one development, but I think we established the other night that that wouldn't be it. It's not like if you did plan A that you waive the rights to develop other areas in the courts by the same means, or waive any rights to continue to change the comprehensive plan. Is that the case?
So, for those of you who weren't there, we had a couple of meetings with some of the clusters or around the golf course last week, and the question was, if I go to this plan here, the majority of what we're talking about in terms of the renovations to the golf course are in what are now the front 9 holes, and then the back 9 would be converted into the front 9 under this plan, and the question was, what's to keep you from coming in at some point in the future and talking about, I'll call it the new front 9 under this plan? Nothing in the sense that, it's, well, a couple of things. One, under this plan, we're not proposing to renovate what are now the back 9 holes. We still would need to come forward at some point in the future and renovate that side of the course. But we wanted to make sure that we bit off enough here with this first phase that we could get through that process and then come back with renovating the course on that side at some point in the future. And this gets to my conversation about sort of the public versus private hands, and how do you long-term prevent people from coming in and adding something. Two of my colleagues who were up here earlier tonight were talking about developments that are years and decades into the future. This is an evolving process. You don't want your community to become stagnant. You don't want it to be static in the sense that nothing ever changes. It's a really interesting book. I'm reading a book right now called Sspa, and I would encourage folks to take a look at it, to read it, because it's kind of interesting as a commentary on this question.
Okay, we have a question over here.
Yes, question for Supervisor Alcorn and the Planning Commission folks. There's development pressure. There's been development pressure on this property for many years. The county, or I should say the Park Authority, is putting a park on Lorton Landfill, which is an industrial site. Here you've got a site, a beautiful golf course that could be a county golf course or a park you would eliminate the development pressure. We wouldn't have to be here late at night and constantly fighting this effort. So my question is that something that's on the table?
He needs the mic.
Yeah, the challenge with the county buying it is just the money. And there are a lot of other projects, a lot of school renovations that are already in line. You know, 3 county recreation centers are in line ahead of it. So it's tough. I mean, it would be very tough to imagine the county buying this golf course, because the county has other golf courses in not too terribly far away. Claire, got more questions?
Plan A wants to put houses 40 feet from our house, so we'll be looking into that window. We don't care very much, we don't corner of the whole thing inside the window. Your program is putting that.
I'm gonna ride with him, so I'm gonna go rescue the dog and wrap. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Thank you. Thank you.
Talk into the microphone.
Hey, how are you doing? Happy belated birthday.
So in terms of the layout, this is just a concept for how it could look, right? We haven't filed any actual plans to do it. For Plan A, yeah, we haven't filed any actual plans to do it.
Plans do look at Russian combat yards.
Fair enough, and I will certainly be willing to come talk to you about the orientation of those.
We have a question over here, over here.
You gonna ride with them?
Your client goes to papers. Why don't you just give the property to the county, let the county make it, keep it as a golf course or turn it into a park, and you can take a tax write-off. Great idea.
Not that simple. Salem, you got one? Yeah, there's one here.
Stephanie, resident, 48 years minus college, here as original owners of business. And a lot of my neighbors here, we're in Indian Ridge, so Top Golf would be in my backyard, directly in my backyard. Indian Ridge is a lovely community with a lot of children, a lot of working individuals, a lot of people work from home. So we have questions about lighting, how late do we expect these lights to people, traffic during the night? If it's going to be lighted, are they going to be, if it's a walking course, if it's lighted, are there going to be people walking on the course at night? And like safety. Parking lots, but really lights. Really concerned about the lights because my kids go to bed at 8:30 and that's it. So
We have to go. Will you ask him how our resting taxes are going to go up for the infrastructure improvements when they have another 10,000 people in cars and so on?
When this comes to the planning commission, we'll have an opportunity to go.
Because we are going to pay the price for that.
Yes.
And Elkhorn pretty much said the reason that the county can't buy it is they are in debt for other projects already. They have to generate revenue. That's all this is a revenue generation.
What we say is that it's not our fault that they overpaid for the course, and it's not our fault that they did not do their due diligence.
How many of these people on the board live in Reston and are going to be impacted by it? I don't think any of them do. On the county commission, the staff.
Oh, none of them.
Yeah, exactly.
You too.
Okay, I know we have a lot of people that have been waiting patiently for the mic.
My name is Evan. I've been a lifelong resident of the county, and I do hear a lot of people have concerns about the open space, and that's something I am sympathetic to. I do think that cities should be designed with stormwater management in mind, but I just want to underscore that we cannot have not building housing on the table. We can't have not building housing on the table here. I am currently an undergraduate student at George Mason University for civil engineering, and my starting salary is within can-kicking distance of the affordable housing brackets that have been proposed earlier tonight. Maybe 85,000, and that's in this area. And I really, really don't want to leave. This place is fantastic. I love it here. I want to live here for as long as I can. Actuarial tables say I have another 59 years here. And you know, maybe it doesn't have to happen on the golf course, but those 268 units, we should plan to build them in more suitable locations. We should see the floor area density rise on those other two propositions. If we're gonna say no here, we have to say yes somewhere.
Right. And that's what Reston was built on. So that's why we have clustered development, so that we can have the open space, and development is very dense.
29 for a few more days. We did just buy a home on the golf course. We were planning on starting a family. We're maybe a little bit different demographic here. But I was wondering, you've been talking a lot about this plan. I think the other plan, Plan B, so the differences between the two is it's like 300 homes and 700 homes? Is that what that difference is?
Yeah, roughly. I mean, we have it for this plan, we've got 288 units.
My camera
And then
ran out of battery, and I didn't have a chance to go over
this
here and get that
plan,
battery.
we haven't specified exactly a number of units, but it's in the ballpark of 700 as a possibility. Yes, ma'am.
Right, so for those two separate plans, we've also heard a lot about affordable homes. I know the home that we just bought was not cheap, but it was probably not going to be as much as what you're putting in now, is what I'm assuming. Is a new townhome would be more than the 70s townhome that we love, that we just purchased. So those who are concerned about the housing, what is the actual price between, for the 300 homes and the 700 homes, what's the sale price of those homes for these people to be able to get to what they want to do?
So good question. It varies by unit type, right? If we end up with single-family detached units, then they're going to be more expensive than townhouses, then are going to be more expensive than stacked townhouses under this scenario. I can't give you a specific.
Right.
So, I've lived the rest of my whole life. I live on the golf course. Our homes, single family right now, are 1.1, 1.2. They build brand new Craftsman truck anywhere in North Virginia, 1.5, 1.6, 1.8. There's no affordability aspect here. They made a poor investment. I work with C&I lending. They made a poor investment with the hope to develop the golf course. The third was young. We've been this since 2006. You're going to fail. They're going to make a killing if this gets through. That's what this is about.
Yes. Yes.
We are dangerously, I'll let you take a few minutes to respond, but we're.
The only thing I was going to add is, and this gets back to the comment earlier about, that somehow salaries haven't kept up with the price of housing. What's actually happened is that we've constrained the supply of housing. And as a result of that, you have, as somebody used the example earlier, you have too many people looking for chairs and not enough chairs. And so part of how you solve that condition, and part of the reason why housing prices are so high is that they have very little competition. Houses sell out in a weekend. So we're talking about, part of this is just increasing the overall supply. There will be dedicated affordable units, but it's about increasing the supply overall is how you keep prices more stable.
Okay, we only have time for 2 more questions before, and then we adjourn the meeting.
I'm happy to stay up here.
A few of us will stick around.
Okay, with these new townhomes.
What are you going to do with your
in,
question?
What's the plan for the homes that will be that
And who are you giving that to? Both golf courses were designated open space, and development was clustered to support open space. It is not our fault that the purchaser didn't do their due diligence and overpaid for the golf course. Sell it to someone who will keep it the golf course.
The meeting's not over yet. We're still answering some of these questions. Go ahead, Mark.
So I think the question was, if I heard it correctly, what happens to the properties that are there today? Was that your question?
Their views, like if they're looking at the golf course, now there's a townhome in the place, things like that.
For those on the other plan, for those that would, if we're talking about plan A, for those that are across the street, then we could certainly work with folks about how the units are organized and how they're arranged to try to minimize those impacts on the property. If we're talking about Plan B, we haven't even done a layout yet to even understand what it looks like yet.
Okay,
So that's a conversation that would happen down the road.
Hi, speaking of impacts, you said earlier that, you met with some of the communities and talked to them. Actually, on that map, some of the people that are here, we are right where you're building that back 9 cafe, or whatever that is called. That is in directly that row of housing where we have our families and our safety. You're gonna put a grill with a parking lot. See those parking lots? See those first rows of houses?
Yes, ma'am.
That's our home.
Okay.
So when I sit on my back patio, I'm gonna be looking at the back 9 grill, at a parking lot, and a supposed space. I'm not sure about the fence, but I'm sure there's better places to put that grill that is not, doesn't put our kids from not being able to play in that backyard and run back and forth. There's gotta be something better. I'm one that's, hey, I get progress, I get growth, I am probably anybody else who's gonna side-eye look at me, but that is just unacceptable.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's, some closing comments before then we just do the one-on-one, because we do have to let school staff transition the room. Did you have any no last comments? Well, thank you. I just wanted to thank people. Staff will be here, Mark will be here. If you have written comments that you would like us to include in the record for tonight, and there's also a public input link. If you want to provide your comment online, public input SSBA process.
Yeah.